Kia ora koutou, ko Victoria McLennan tōku ingoa, and welcome to this IT Professionals Lunch and Learn. Now, I'm joined today by Kirsten, Nicholl and Jonathan Rogers from Next Steps Coaching. Welcome to you both.
Thank
Kia
you.
ora.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for joining us today. This is a webinar, so we can't see your smiling faces, but you do have the ability to ask questions as we go along via the Q&A function, and I'll seep those into the conversation. But we are going to be talking about career coaching today. So first of all, welcome again to you both, and I'll ask you both to give us a bit of a brief overview of your mahi and your experience in the career development and career coaching space. So Kirsten, do you want to go first?
Sure thing. I've been working in this space for about 12 years. Before that, I had a whole bunch of roles. It's fair to say I've been around the traps. Worked in tourism for quite a long time, both in New Zealand and overseas. Had some leadership roles, but I worked for the government too. I worked at the State Services Commission when I finished uni, and I have had all manner of weird and wonderful roles. So my thing was I never knew what I wanted to do when I grew up. And I think that because of that, one of the things that came out of that for me is that when I retrained into coaching, I went straight away into the careers area because I had such a passion to help other people move through the discomfort of that. So my mahi very much is about who are you, what makes you tick, very holistic in focus. And I'm passionate about career because career has such a massive impact on our well-being, our overall life well-being, and also it is very influential in our choices and decisions and our belief in our ability to create a life that suits us. So and also let's not underestimate the power of being able to earn money. That's important. That's where the choices come in. So I am extremely passionate about what I do, and I work with people in an enormous range of professional capabilities. Some young school leavers, no qualifications, just starting out, right up to people late career, professional, tradies, hands-on, practical, everything, all of it. Everybody, love it.
Nice, thank you. And Jonathan, what about you, your mahi
Oh
and,
gosh.
and what you do?
I've been working in the career transition leadership development space for too many years, probably from the early 2000s. Prior to working in the industry, I come from an FMCG background, so worked for organisations like in New Zealand, Coca-Cola, Amatil back in the day, DB Brewers. Prior to that, Cadbury's, Schweppes, and Coca-Cola UK in the UK. I personally went through some career transition myself, as I say, in the early 2000s, and was very lucky to have been provided some support by a fantastic coach and an organization, a coach very similar to Kirsten. That kind of opened up my eyes to realize what I really wanted to do moving forward was help people who had been through a journey I'd been through. And that really started my career in career transition from a corporate perspective. So I'm a business developer, I'm a corporate focused individual, and worked as a country managing director for a fantastic organization for many, many years. And then about 3 or so years ago, decided to start my own business, which is Next Steps Coaching Limited. So taking on board all of that experience from a corporate perspective and working with people and organizations of all shapes, sizes across all trade sectors, and really focusing on helping them take their next steps when they've been impacted by workplace change.
Nice. Well, let's just crack into it. So to kick us off, Jonathan, why don't you tell us a bit about what you are seeing and hearing from the market right now and what the pain points for people out there are?
Oh gosh, that's such a great question. The market, as we can all appreciate, is very volatile at the moment. We're going through a bit of a tough recessionary period, not dissimilar from the GFC as I was thinking about the other day, but the driver behind all the change is obviously what happened during COVID. So we're going through a lot of pain points to realign, the economy, realign government, realign businesses to deal with what we've been through, but also to prepare for the future opportunity. So, there's a lot of restructuring, people losing their jobs, as we know, particularly across public sector. But there's a knock-on effect as well. It's not just government that's facing a lot of change. There's a lot of industry going through change as well. For example, there are a couple of pulp mills and wood production mills up in Southern North Island that have closed down, which has really impacted upon the local community. Or over sort of 20% of the local community have suddenly lost their jobs. So, things are tough. However, there's one thing I can guarantee everybody, the change is a continuum and it's pretty much a cycle. We go through tough times, but as we traverse the landscape, we will be moving into better, more productive times as well.
Yeah, it's good to know. So, Kirsten, building on this, what are you finding folks are most in need of career support wise at the moment?
Yeah, well, this might be a little bit unexpected, what I'm about to say, because in some ways it doesn't relate to career at all. Firstly, they're coming to me for reassurance. I think because there's so much uncertainty out there in the marketplace, and we pick up a lot of our views about things through media and talking to other people, of course. So people are coming to me for reassurance around will I be able to get a job? I'm hearing XYZ, I'm hearing this thing, how's that going to affect me? So there's so much fear, there's so much anxiety. And I think this is particularly the case for early career, or perhaps towards the tail end of their career, because they know that there are real biases there. So I think the two key messages I want to offer clients in this space are, helping people believe that you do have plenty to offer, more than enough to offer, and that if you're taking up your headspace with fear and doubt, there's not a lot of room in there for moving forward. So it's really working in the mindset. The other thing I'm seeing a lot of is a need for well-being, general well-being support. So the work I do very much walks the line, and I said earlier, I work in a very holistic focus. If we don't address these two things up front, the reassurance and the overall well-being, like stress, burnout, how can I keep my energy going, all that stuff, there's again no space or energy to be working practically. And then finally, things like how can I stand out to a prospective employer? How do I make myself stand out in a crowded marketplace where there's so many people applying for jobs? And in some ways, this is the easy bit. Because really what I help people with is help gain clarity around, okay, what is it that you have to offer? Where do you want to go? And how do we, build that bridge between those two things? And so I find quite quickly a person can go from fear, doubt, anxiety to, okay, we got this in hand.
Nice, that's great insight. So one of the things I thought we could just clarify before we kind of get into some of the meat of this is one of the things I see people find confusing is understanding the difference between a mentor and a coach for their careers. Jonathan, do you want to just give us the shorthand on these two roles and when you utilize one or the other?
Right. Well, both coaches and mentors have a valuable role to play. That's the first thing I'd like to say. From a coaching perspective, coaching tends to be more focused on the moment, the need to develop, professional development, career coaching, where am I going with my career? Could be a leadership coaching perspective. I've got some real challenges with the people I'm working with at the moment. How can I best address and overcome some of those challenges? So it tends to be very structured from a process point of view. Process is probably the wrong word to use because every journey is different, but it tends to be very structured. It tends to be very outcome driven. So you actually tend to have an agreement with your coachee or your coaching client to say, look, what are we here to achieve? Let's set some specific objectives and let's determine a pathway to get from A to B. So that pathway can be very flexible depending on what happens during the course of the coaching sessions. But it's very much about empowering people to take control and to develop the skills and tools and confidence to address whatever challenge they might be facing at the time. Mentoring is more about working with somebody who possibly comes from the same industry as you, even possibly from the same organization. So building a long-term relationship with somebody who acts as your ongoing support and potential advisor around things like career, where to from here, and again, potentially dealing with some of those challenges that that individual might be facing within his profession. So it's like building that long-term, more holistic sort of relationship. And it could be over years, that sort of relationship. So coaches, very focused, very
Right.
structured, very outcome driven, looking at growing people's capabilities and confidence to take control and take the next steps. Mentors are around being a guide, a support person, tapping into the wisdom of that individual because they come from an industry that's very relative to who you are and where you're from.
Nice. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. So there are so many topics we could tackle now. I was thinking about ageism at both an entry level and a late career stage, the challenges in finding your first job when you come to New Zealand as a new immigrant, or what to do if you've lost your job. Kirsten, do you want to pick one of the many topics we could talk to and speak about that one?
Yeah, I mean, I could speak about all of those things. Maybe not so much the what to do when you first come to New Zealand, although I have come back to New Zealand because I've lived overseas quite a bit. Um, what to do if you've lost your job, though, I think could be of immediate benefit to some of the people on the call today because it's inevitable. You know, we are going through such large cycles of change, as Jonathan mentioned earlier. So it's going to happen to us or somebody we know if it hasn't already happened. So I would say, and you know, this might sound silly, but first things first, enlist the help of a career coach. There's so many reasons why that could be helpful. So they'll help you work through your priorities. And even for that short-term immediate sort of allyship, and you realize you're not alone. This person has helped many people before you know, so there's a process. They help you make plans, they help you set yourself apart from the competition, and all of that is really going to be about helping you build a greater sense of control over the situation, which may feel immediately like it's out of control. Secondly, once you've got the coach on board, first things first, dealing with the emotion, the immediate emotion. You know, I listen to a lot of people, and sometimes the redundancy or the change comes out of thin air. They had no idea. And sometimes the first session I have with client is literally sitting there and listening to them dump, just
Mm.
nodding and, you know, saying things like, I hear you, and, you know, just providing that support and non-judgment. Meeting a client where they're at is everything. Then it would be something like well-being check-in. What do you do to improve your well-being? You know, and it's always a bit of an alarm bell if somebody can't answer that question. All right, then we need to go in here and make sure that we can help you identify some things that are filling your cup. So checking in with how they're tracking. You know, stress and burnout, those are massive things I'm seeing in my coaching this year. Either people who are in burnout and out of work currently because they cannot work, or getting near to that burnout zone. So wellbeing check-in, you know, I would feel neglectful if I didn't do that as part of the package we offer. Then it's a matter of addressing the immediate priorities. Sometimes I'll have a client and they've got a job interview tomorrow, and I might just be meeting them for the first time. So that's where we start. We start exactly where you need. And so that's in that way, coaching is very fit for purpose and relevant to the person's needs and requirements. And then there's a bunch of what I call nuts and bolts things that happen when, you know, good things to do when you lose your job, when you're working with a coach. So things like helping identify your skills. What do you have to offer? Getting really clear about that. CV, obviously, cover letter, feedback, interview prep, that's a massive one. And anybody who's enlisting some help with all of this is going to have an immediate advantage over the person who's going it alone. And so again, that can help build a person's confidence in what they have to offer. And then there's, you know, helping a person reach out, you know, LinkedIn, networks, recruiters, how do you get the most out of that, all of that stuff. And also providing feedback. Is the CV working? How would you know? How did the interviews go? How are you tracking so far? So all of those things are, I think, the kind of top priorities for when you find out you've lost your job. And there's so much support that can be given in that space. And as I say, it's completely unique to the person's individual needs and what they're wanting.
Just having someone to support you through that process if you've never
Uh,
been through it before must be
yeah.
fantastic, right?
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons my job is so rewarding is I see somebody come in, they're distraught, upset, angry, all of the above, and to in a few short sessions see the change, and then they start picking up things and running with it, and getting their mojo back, and I find that incredibly rewarding, because there's always hope. There's
Yeah.
always hope. There's always work out there, and people 9 times out of 10 have a whole lot more to offer than they believe they have.
Thanks for that. It was great. Now, Jonathan, of all these topics we could talk about, what do you want to share?
What? How can I follow on from that sort of fabulous explanation that Kirsten just provided? Um, Look, I tend to find the same things. I mean, there are certain hot topics that continually bubble to the surface, even over my 20 years of experience of working in this particular space. And that is burnout, that is resilience, that is coping with change when change has been thrust upon you. And that's one of the key things that, working with a coach or working with Next Steps Coaching or myself can really add value. It's about building that person's confidence up again and helping them develop the skills and the tools to be effective in their career thinking, their career planning, determining where they see themselves going in the future, build that kind of career action plan, but also be confident when they start applying for jobs. So they're in the best position, and they're what I would call it being a danger of being offered a role. We want to make sure they've got the confidence and the skills so they can put their best foot forward when they apply for a role, which they've determined as being a really good fit for them. Not just the role, but the organization that they're applying to as well, because we spend so much time at work. We want to make sure that A, we get the most out of what we do, and B, we really enjoy what we do, because it makes a huge difference. It's all about engagement.
Finding a
Does that
job you
make
love,
sense?
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Right, we have lots of questions on the Q&A, so I'll just go through them one at a time. So the first one, the tricky one, any advice for someone with a disability that makes predictable working hours hard/impossible? How can they find and grow a career apart from going solo, and that imposes a whole lot of additional stress and responsibilities? Who'd like to tackle that one?
I think you're in the best position to answer that one, Kirsten, thinking back.
Yep, yep. In my previous role, or one of the roles I've had over the last few years has been an employment consultant, supporting people with disabilities in the workforce. This is something that does come up as an issue. And this is where a person or coach can help a person get really creative and thinking about, okay, what are the skills you have to offer? I think of this all as what do you have to trade? What assets have you got to trade? And so that in that way, you're putting your best foot forward and getting clear about what it is you have to offer. And then working back from that, going, okay, who could use these skills? What organizations might really find these of benefit? And how can I make an approach to those types of organizations? Whenever you're working with a client, I think it's really important to clarify the parameters. Okay, I want to work these hours, or I can only work in these types of places. Anything that's a sort of a deal breaker, I would call. Those are things to be addressed. And I think it's really important to be honest with yourself and asking yourself, okay, where might I best, be utilized, and work back from that rather than what's a job I can apply for. So building out from you, which starts with a clear understanding of what you have to offer, I think.
And we could run a whole different webinar talking about what employers need to do to embrace people from different
Uh,
backgrounds with different
This is
capabilities,
something I
couldn't
feel
we?
incredibly passionate about because I think we have
Mm.
so much untapped potential because an employer says, no, you need to be working for 10 hours a day in this factory. And they struggle to get people, or people go in, burn out, break down because your body can't handle it. What say you had two people who could work 5 hours a day?
Well, that leads really nicely into our next question, which is also something about the psyche of employers in New Zealand. Sydney asks, why are there so few part-time job
Yeah.
opportunities in IT for master's students, for example, even though IT is in high demand here in New Zealand. And I think this is relevant of
Oh,
any industry, not just digital technology, isn't it? Who's
yeah.
got some thoughts on that one?
How long have you got? Um, I can kick off with that because I think, I think change. I sometimes feel like we're on the brink of incredible change in working, the arrangement of work. I think we're showing more and more people are burning out, and more people are not able to or wanting to work 10 hours a day lifting 20 kilo sacks of cement. It's just not working. I mean, surely let's just look at ACC, get some of the stats. But we have to, I think, when one has to advocate passionately for change. And we need to try somehow to start educating employers. And sometimes, again, I'm going to similar answer to the last question, start thinking about what skills do I have to offer and who might need these, and go in almost with what I call either a letter of approach or an introductory letter. I assisted a guy to do one of these earlier this week. He's in IT himself, and some of these IT companies or the recruiters are saying, get in touch. If you don't see a job you like here, get in touch with us and we can talk about other potential opportunity. Offer to contract, offer to do something short term, offer to do an internship, but all of it has to start with you being clear about what's in it for the employer,
Yeah.
But I think we need to break down these full-time, permanent job.
Perfectly formed seniors
Yeah.
every time.
I agree with Kirsten on that point. The world of work is changing dramatically.
Mm,
And COVID opened up Pandora's box, especially
mm,
around the impact of technology. So we've learned
mm,
to do work in a different way. We've learned that we can still be productive and really add value by working remotely. So,
yeah.
but to go back to that particular question, I mean, my initial thinking was trying to find a part-time role is to, and again, it's a segue to what Kirsten was saying. Think about the types of organizations or businesses that will be looking for somebody with your skills, but from a part-time perspective.
Mm.
So rather than think, oh, I want to find a part-time role working in government, maybe you should be thinking, I want to find a part-time role working for a small business enterprise somewhere because their needs won't be as big as a larger
Yep.
employer, but they'll still have
Nice.
IT needs.
Nice. That's a good thought. Right, the next one, Jonathan, this is something you and I spoke about last week, actually. Could someone please comment on ageism and challenges in career changes? So I'm attempting a career change into technology. Unfortunately, the junior area in the industry has been completely eroded, which we all know is there are very few entry-level jobs. I'm also concerned about the perception of me when I'm trying to start out and get an internship or entry level role, and I'm already mid career age. So, do you want to tackle that, Jonathan, about ageism?
That's such an interesting question again. I mean, employers cannot discriminate because of age. So if they do, they're discriminating. But the question is how can you open up pathway when you are a mature job applicant? And I've got some ideas around this. I mean, traditionally, for example, what you tend to put on your CV is where you've been and when you were there. So you're immediately kind of giving away information about how long you've been in the employment market, when you completed your, I don't know, degree in IT, etc. So one of my thoughts was, well, don't put that information on your CV. Don't provide a barrier during the application process because at the end of the day, an employer should be looking to have a conversation with you because you've got the skills and capability and knowledge and expertise they're seeking. Age should not be coming into it.
So can I add on to what Jonathan's saying there? Because I deal with this again with clients all day, every day. And it's a thing. Part of it's about how you perceive yourself as well and your confidence. But the other thing is, I think, building on what Jonathan said, creating a skills-based CV. And this is something you almost never see. Most people say, I did this job from this time to this time, blah, 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 and go back in chronological order. And I say to people, a CV is a marketing piece. So in the way that marketing is sometimes smoke and mirrors, a CV can be smoke and mirrors as well. I mean, you can see I'm not a spring chicken, but you wouldn't necessarily know that from my CV because I have, instead of saying career history, I have a heading that says selected career history. You don't need to know what I did when I finished uni. You don't need to know what I even did 20 years ago. It's not relevant to what I do now. But some of that skill will be in the skills part of my CV. So I think there's ways that we can de-age ourselves in a CV, and it's all a matter of knowing what to put in and what to leave out.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, in the interest of time, I'm going to just take one more. This person's actually asked 4 different questions in their one
Great.
question. So the first part of their question is any feedback on which skills are in demand or which sectors, if any, are growing. And then the second part of the question, which I think is probably quite relevant to everyone, there is so much competition for any work. How can I improve my chance of getting work and money coming in? And then the last question is savings are disappearing too fast. Should I register for the benefit? So I'll let you both tackle different parts of that. So which skills are in demand? There's so much competition. How do I stand out? And should they register for the benefit? Who wants to take each of those?
Okay. I'll pick off by saying a few things. It's really interesting when you research what's happening in the job market in New Zealand and Australia, in fact, globally at the moment. In New Zealand, it seems to be that particular trade sectors are growing, are in demand. And funnily enough, I mean, all the research I've done recently is the IT sector is still, an in-demand growth environment. But what I believe employers are looking for more so nowadays in applications is not just have you got the technical skills to do the job, it's do you have the non-technical skills to make a difference when you're in the job. So being able to demonstrate that you've got communication, you've got those interpersonal skills, that you can build relationships, that you can work effectively within a team and help the team grow, that you can adapt and pivot, that you're resilient, you can cope with an ever-changing environment. Those sorts of what I call power skills are beginning to float to the surface more and more when employers are looking at CVs. So it's important to remember that your power skills will make the difference of getting to an interview.
Great. Now, Kirsten, we've only got a couple of minutes left. Their savings are disappearing. Should they register for the benefit?
There's no harm in it. And sometimes we have to get out of our own way and put our pride to the side and say, how am I going to feed my family? And I also think that, I had a COVID job during COVID. There was no coaching to be had, I can assure you of that. So I went and became a community support worker for 9 months. And I also worked in a school in a careers department. So sometimes making a sideways step and being creative about what you do. Now, I also would urge anybody in that situation to think about, do I have any opportunity coming to me organically? A mate who says, hey, I know someone who's looking for blah, 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 blah. Or, hey, I've got a project I need help with. Can you help me? So in other words, where you are now, have your A game, have your job that you really want, your career job that you're going for, and in tandem, try to find something else that's going to put food on the table in the immediate term. Some of the skills you might pick up out of one of those jobs are something that might actually lead you to be able to add a new skill on your CV or something that will then set you apart for that next step. So this is about creativity. And building up again from what Jonathan said, put the fear of the competition out of your head. There's nothing you can do about them. You've got to get clear about your own offering. Any minute you're worrying about what the competition's up to is a minute you're not developing your own concept of what you have to offer.
Well said.
So now that we're wrapping, the questions are getting loaded up thick and fast. So what I think we'll do is we'll take those questions away and we'll write some answers and email them back to everyone who registered for this webinar. So sorry, everyone, we don't have time. We do have time, however, for one more thing, which is, Jonathan, we're launching a series of workshops on this subject of career coaching, because we're getting, here at IT Professionals, we're just getting so many people coming and asking for help. And so that's what led to me going out and finding you and having this conversation about how can we help our members. So we're launching a series of workshops. Do you want to talk about the first one of those and what that's going to be all about?
Yeah, will do. Thanks, Vic. Funnily enough, the first workshop is really focusing on the bulk of what we've been talking about today. And it's going to focus on helping people develop some skills and tools and confidence to reboot themselves, reboot their careers, and just to have the tools lined up for future job application. So we'll be covering a lot of what we've been talking about today, dealing with change and pressure and stress, understanding what your particular transferable skills and competencies are, understanding how you can add value to your proposition by building your capabilities and awareness of some of those power skills that we've been talking about. Looking at things like job search strategy, how do I go about finding that next elusive job opportunity? And fundamentally, just being prepared to take those next steps. So our focus will be on providing insights and some tools and some learnings and some templates in those particular areas, but also leaving the door open for any participant to reach out and connect with either myself or with Kirsten, who is going to be facilitating the first workshop, to arrange some personalized coaching so you can continue the journey with us, so we can support you as individuals to take your next steps. I mean, at the end of the day, we are here to help. This is what motivates us. This is what drives us. This is what our man is all about. We just want to help people take the next steps and be successful moving forward.
That's a perfect note to end on. Thank you both so much for your time today. So much we could have unpacked in this, and I think we covered a lot of ground in 30 minutes. Thank you to everyone who has attended and for your questions. There are now 10 questions that we will, between us, come up with some answers on. I think there's one about cybersecurity specifically, which I'm happy to field and come back to everyone with. So with that, I will say ka kite. Thank you again, Jonathan and Kirsten. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.